historical. They made it up. The Romans did that, the Julian family did that, and the Piso family. This is a guy, Roman Piso, elite. This is one of the elites of the world. This is one of the richest of these families. They invented the whole historical thing and put it into the Bible so that it would appear to be history, so that they could keep people in the outer temple and then enslave them. This is the New Jerusalem, guys, that has enslaved us. And that's why the judges refuse to have any kind of conscience and any kind of love and any kind of justice in their courts. They know they've got no right to send little boys into the prison. Why do they send them to prison? Because they're getting commissions. They get $160,000 because they create what's called a constructive trust. When you go to court, they make a constructive trust. And you're going in as the beneficiary of the trust, of the Cestui Que Vie trust, that has stolen all of your wealth, all of it. You have nothing until we collapse the trust, and that's what Serena's going to be doing in the second half. She's going to teach how to collapse these trusts. This is the 666, the mark of the beast, the mark of the fool. Because if you're foolish enough as a parent to say, oh, there's my little boy, he's born, and the government says you've got to register him, and, oh, well, we'll inform, the hospitals get $2,000 fee, spot fee, for registering you. That's why the nurses there are you going to register him? Yes, register. What does register mean? Well, I know what that means. That means king. You're giving over to the king. All capitals is a fiction. It's a corporation. And it's connected to this. This is why a lot of people go to court and don't understand why they lose. They don't understand what's going on, the jargon. Well, you're gonna get that. You're going to get that now. First, I want to show you a couple of pictures. That is 1968. That's the Pope. That's Pope Pius IX. That's an army. This is a picture that the Vatican would not like you to see. Comes out of Tony Bushby's book. He's another Australian who's written a lot about the Vatican, the papal billions. That is 1571, I believe. I don't have the information for that. I forget who was the famous painter. I think that's the Bay of Naples. There's 200 warships there. Do you know who owns those warships? They're on their way to fight against Turkey in 1571, an inquisition, a crusade. That's the Pope's. Look at those ships. That's only a part of the Navy. That has morphed into the US Navy, the Pentagon. They're still doing it. The Inquisition's on, man. It's George Bush and his buddies. They're going for the Pope. That's a sheriff. That's a New South Wales sheriff. That cross is their ecclesiastical duties. They are officers of the Inquisition. This is an officer of the Inquisition, people. He's telling you. Same cross that these Christians, Christopher Columbus, when he landed on the Caribbeans, they wrote letters back to Spain saying there were 3 million people on this island, there's only 200 left. Because Columbus has gone mad, killing people. He was murdering people left, right and centre. They were having an orgy of killing people that didn't repent and choose Christ. An orgy. And the Inquisition went to the American shores. That's Pope Julius being stoned. This is a famous painting, by the way, being stoned by Matthew, Mark, Luke and John for how evil he was. Pope Julius. Good old Michelangelo gave us a nice little picture of Pope Julius sitting on the toilet seat for how much he loved him. There's a good reason why I'm showing you all these pictures. That's what Michelangelo, that's one of his sketches, Pope Julius, for how evil he was. That is a flyer that was going around in 1501 for the same Pope, saying that he was from the devil and from Satan. Because why? Because they are. Look at them now. See those SS officers? And the Vatican, look at them blessing the killers, training them in mind control. Go, the Cestui Que Vie accounts need to be charged up, we need money. Look at how eager this Orthodox bastard is. He's so eager to bless them. Go. He'll stay at home, eating his bread and cheese and champagne and caviar. Yeah, no worries. Look at that. That's a famous picture. There you go. Pope Pacelli. There's a reason why I want to show you that. I want to share that with you guys. Now, let's get into this. What I'm going to do now is show you how the courts work. It's all ecclesiastical. Okay, and this is very sad, but we need to know this. It's cruel. It's absolutely cruel, the poor young boys that go in to court with a lawyer. The lawyer's working for the Cestui Que Vie accounts. The prosecution is, the clerk is, and the judge is. And you bring a lawyer with you to prove that you're a ward of the state, that you're lost at sea. So you need a Cestui Que Vie account, someone to manage all your wealth. They've stolen it. A court room. So let's make a little courtroom here. We've got the judge here, we've got the clerk over here, and you and the prosecution, okay? Every trust has a trustee, a executor, and a beneficiary. Okay, that's the owner. This guy executes, sign, and this guy's the beneficiary. That's you. You're the beneficiary of the Cestui Que Vie trust, right? Now, why they bring you into court is because they want to create a constructive trust with the presumption, with the knowing that you're already a slave of the system by virtue of your name. That's why the judge, the first thing he says is, what is your name? For the record, can we have your name? He wants that name. The moment you give him that name and agree to be that name, you bring life to the Cestui Que Vie trust, and he's got you, because he wants to change roles with you. The clerk here is the trustee, not the judge. This guy's the administrator of the trust. He's just the administrator, the judge. You are the beneficiary. This guy, the prosecution, I should have put the prosecution inside the circle, is executor. I think I've confused that, but it doesn't matter. He's the executor. He's got all the liability. He's the one that created got the writ created to get you into court, the summons. Because what they want you to do is appear in court, accept that you are the name. Oh, we've found the beneficiary, right? And then he's going to swap roles with you and be the beneficiary and get you to execute your own sentence. Now, if you think I'm stretching that a little bit, basically everything that goes on in court is the sacrament of penance. What's the sacrament of penance? We've forgotten. But these guys, these guys here well knew what the sacrament of penance was, because that's what brought them in there. The sacrament of penance is, you're a dirty, rotten sinner. We're all sinners. Sin, 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 sin. But God's merciful. Oh, he's lovely. He forgives. So you've got this treasury of credits up there in heaven. What we're going to do is we're going to administer those credits. We're going to administer them, and it's penance. And you pay. And the system works on the confession. It's all the confession. You go to court to confess your sins and pay for them. That's penance. Every single thing in court runs as a church does, and confession, and you go in there to confess and accuse yourself. Penance is a sacrament. In the new law instituted by Christ, in which forgiveness, this comes from the Catholic Church. Have a listen to this. This is from the, I've just ripped this off the Catholic Wiki Encyclopedia on the net last night. Of the new law instituted, penance is a sacrament of the new law instituted by Christ, in which forgiveness of sins committed after baptism is granted through the priest's absolution to those who with true sorrow confess their sins and promise to satisfy for the same. It is called a sacrament, not simply a function of ceremony, because it is an outward sign instituted by Christ to impart grace to the soul. As an outward sign, it comprises the actions of the penitent in presenting himself to the priest and accusing himself of his sins, and the actions of the priest in pronouncing absolution and imposing satisfaction. The whole procedure is usually called, from one of its parts, confession. That's what you're doing when you go to court. I'll show you this. Yeah, it's all in the wording. It's still there. It's in the wording. You look at the words and there it is. You watch. Because it is a judicial process in which the penitent is at once the accuser, the person accused, and the witness. Remember this, because that's how the Inquisition ran, and that's how courts work. It's exactly the same thing. It's morphed, but it hasn't changed in its nature. So you become the person accused, the accuser, and the witness. They're saying it. While the priest pronounces judgment and sentence, the judge. The grace conferred is deliverance from guilt and sin, and in the case of mortal sin, from its eternal punishment, hence also reconciliation with God, justification. That's the sentence. Finally, the confession is made not in the secrecy of the penitent's heart, nor to the layman as friend and advocate, nor to the representative of human authority, but to a duly ordained priest with requisite jurisdiction and with the power of the keys, the power to forgive sins which Christ granted to his church. Now I'm going to talk about another thing here, indulgences. Remember I mentioned those from the same encyclopedia. In Catholic theology, an indulgence is the full or partial remission of temporal punishment due for sins which have already been forgiven. Of course, God forgives, but you're a sinner, and we'll manage that for you. That's all it is. That's all it is, guys, and they are the priests of Baal. The temple Ba is Baal. Baal is Saturn. It's the church of Satan. They're the Grim Reapers in black. Excuse me for that. In Catholic theology, an indulgence is the full or partial remission of temporal punishment due for sins which have already been forgiven. The indulgence is granted by the Catholic Church after the sinner has confessed and received absolution. The belief is that indulgences draw on the treasury of merit accumulated by Christ's abundantly meritorious sacrifice on the cross and the virtues and penances of the saints. They are granted for specific good works and prayers. They've monetized sin. And this was developed by the Jesuits in the 1500s with the backing of the Venetians who created the Jesuits. The Jesuits rule the world. They do. A court is an oratory. That's where you confess. Just look at these words. Have a look at these words. A clerk. What's a clerk? What does it sound like? A cleric. The judge is an ordinary. What's an ordinary? An officer of the church who by reason of office has ordinary power to execute the church's laws. That's what the judge is, an ordinary. A case. What's the case? We're going to hear a case today. Hear a case? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Yes, tell me what you've done. That's what it is. That's why you will never bring to life that name when you go to church, when you go to Baal's church, when you go to court. Cortio, which means, oh God, I forgot the name. Cortio. Well, it's an oratory. Writ. Is it two T's? No. Got it wrong here. Comes from, well, there's no W in Latin. It doesn't exist. Well, it used to. It's a rite. It's a religious